Shock! The Ukrainian armed forces have broken into Belarus, the end of Lukashenko's regime. Zelensky has lifted the curtain a little. Ukrainian special forces are brilliantly clearing out enemy bases right under Minsk's nose, minus the towers for Shaheds, plus panic among the dictators. Putin urgently called Lukashenko, a second call in a week, and this is just the beginning. The fairy tales are over. The president of Ukraine harshly crushed the pathetic excuses of the Belarusian dictator. A fatal mistake. Deploying Oreshnik missiles will turn Lukashenko into a legitimate target for NATO and Ukraine. All the details of our fighters' historic triumph right now. Watch until the end. My respects, this is Ukraine Today. I'm Andriy Silakov. Let's discuss some good news. The Ukrainian armed forces broke into Belarus. Lukashenko received a fatal blow. Ukrainian special services have begun clearing out enemy bases right on the territory of the neighboring country. President Volodymyr Zelensky has officially lifted the curtain on top-secret operations. Our fighters successfully destroyed critical Russian infrastructure right under the nose of the Belarusian dictator. No more red lines. The end of Lukashenko's regime came from where he least expected it.
I won't say how, but our guys were working on making sure that 3 or 4 relay stations were no longer operating on the territory of Belarus. We simply have no other choice, otherwise attacks on our land will continue. And now, I want to tell you, there are far fewer launches from that direction.
The relay stations are down. Ukraine is blinding the Shaheds. This is exactly how Ukrainian heroes have already eliminated at least 3 or 4 Russian communication towers on Belarusian soil. It was these relay stations that coordinated and guided the new Shahed drones toward peaceful cities and Ukraine's energy facilities. Volodymyr Zelensky also hinted that Belarusians should continue to prepare for certain risks due to the equipment on their territory that threatens Ukraine.
Belarus is taking a big risk. Lukashenko is pushing you toward Putin. And now this is not just a question of Belarus's sovereignty, but a matter of security, because you are being used. You have technologies and equipment on your territory that threaten Ukraine, and today all of Europe. All of Europe. I believe these are serious risks, and Belarusians should be aware of them. In
the bunker, there is panic. Lukashenko urgently called Putin. The ground is burning under his feet, and the father of all Belarus is frantically pulling the Kremlin's wires in fear. Recently, he had an emergency call with Putin for the second time in a week and a half. Officially, the propaganda mumbles boring tales about preparations for the meeting of the Supreme State Council of the Union State. But we understand the real picture. After the brilliant strikes by the Ukrainian special forces, the Belarusian dictator is in a state of absolute panic, realizing that his regime is falling apart at the seams.
A telephone conversation took place between Vladimir Putin and the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko. During the phone call, the heads of state discussed preparations for the upcoming meeting of the Supreme State Council of the Union State of Russia and Belarus, which will be held in Moscow next week.
The fairy tales have truly come to an end. Lukashenko has become a legitimate target. Previously, the frightened president of Belarus tried to justify himself to Zelensky, claiming at the start of the invasion that the missiles launched on their own, saying, "We don't control anything." Now that cheap excuse doesn't work anymore. The installation of new relays and the adjustment of strikes are direct orders and the absolute responsibility of the local authorities. Lukashenko has become a full-fledged accomplice to terror, and the retribution for this will be as harsh as possible. And
at the very beginning of the war, after Lukashenko lied to me, claiming he didn't control anything, all your military warehouses were taken to Russia. All the artillery was transported to the Russian Federation. According to our information, maybe I'm mistaken, but the Russians were supposed to return all of it. But they didn't give anything back to Belarus. They just paid money, as far as I know. And most importantly, your country continues to produce artillery for the Russians. This means that the Belarusian authorities are participating in the war.
Another fatal mistake by Minsk is the Oreshnik missile. The Belarusian leader keeps digging his own grave. The next step is preparing sites for Russian Oreshnik ballistic missile systems. Zelensky gave a stern warning that Lukashenko is making a huge mistake by trying to scare Europe with a cheap show. The Russians are bringing in this weapon without even asking Minsk for permission. As soon as these systems appear, they will instantly become legitimate targets. For Ukraine. And for NATO as well.
I'm just saying that Lukashenko is making a big mistake. It's not just about the Oreshnik system. Everyone can see that they're making a big show out of it right now. They haven't even brought the whole system into Belarus yet, only the related vehicles, but they're already presenting it as if everything is there. They're trying to scare Europe. But Lukashenko is playing a dangerous game, because after these steps, without even asking him, the Russians will definitely bring the Oreshnik system onto your country's territory.
Belarusians need to understand all the risks and realize what kind of dirty war their president is dragging them into. With his agreements with Putin, he is turning a peaceful country into a testing ground and a target for retaliatory strikes. Lukashenko has finally signed his own sentence, and the brilliant operation by Ukrainian fighters has proven it. We can reach the enemy anywhere. This is the end for Lukashenko. Poland is mining the border in 48 hours. Warsaw is withdrawing from the Ottawa Convention and, with the Eastern Shield, is ready to turn the borders with Belarus and Russia into a continuous minefield. And while the Poles are sealing themselves off completely from their unpredictable neighbors, the cornered Minsk dictator is panicking and launching a quiet mobilization. What kind of battle is the Batka preparing for, and why are his days numbered? We're laying all the cards on the table right now.
Poland makes a loud statement and strengthens its border. In western Belarus, reservists are being urgently called up. Coincidence?
You can only rely on yourself. Don't count on anyone else. I'm saying it for the 5th time. We have no friends in the world. None.
Men in Belarus have started receiving draft notices en masse. They're taken away the same day, with no time to pack. And on top of that, their phones are confiscated. So, as relatives report, contact with those drafted is immediately lost.
Honestly, this would make me pretty anxious. The main difference is that this never happened before. And in fact, Belarusian social media exploded precisely because this never happened before. And people are asking each other, say, if this is happening in some region, what about you? Is this happening where you are too? The first question everyone asks each other is this happening all over Belarus right now? Or is it still isolated to just a few regions of the country?
Officially, of course, this is being called a combat readiness check, not a mobilization. But in Russia, everything also started with gatherings and inspections.
I would like to say, first and most importantly, the concealment of information. Indeed, a person is taken away immediately, right away, dragged off somewhere, and their phone is taken so they can't tell anyone what's happening to them next. This is the maximum level of information secrecy. And there is one point that should particularly worry us, because we really don't understand what will happen to people next.
What's interesting, right? This is a call for reservists specifically in the western regions of the country, that is, near Poland. There is also a strategically sensitive area of Europe, Suwalki corridor. There are too many coincidences in one place.
It's a rather narrow stretch between the Kaliningrad region and Russia. Partially, in fact, the most populated settlement, Suwalki, is located not far from the border between Poland and Lithuania. The width there, I think, is about 40 kilometers, so it's really quite small. Therefore, if you strategically concentrate and mobilize a substantial and formidable array of military forces there, you could, in a relatively short period of time, successfully establish and secure a land corridor to the Kaliningrad region.
At the same time, Poland announced the 48-hour time frame. That's exactly how long they need to fully mine the border with Belarus and Russia.
Today, on February 20th, the country withdrew from the Ottawa Convention and now has the full right to mine its borders.
But could the Belarusian mobilizations be connected to Poland's own actions?
Even though so far we've only seen hybrid attacks, that doesn't mean something else couldn't happen tomorrow. A real attack, a genuinely hot one. Therefore, of course, I would consider this mobilization story as a real threat of a possible attack. And accordingly, well, if it takes more than 48 hours to lay mines, then it's time to start mining already.
Recently, Lukashenko also ordered a large-scale inspection of the combat readiness of the armed forces. At the military base, they practiced everything to the fullest extent.
We are not working for a grade. We are working to be ready to defend our country, to defend our national interests, our sovereignty, our Republic of Belarus.
And now suddenly reservists are being urgently called up. So maybe this is just part of Lukashenko's inspection?
Undoubtedly, in my opinion, this looks like a signal from the West, but we shouldn't perceive it only as a signal. I believe that this should be seen as a concrete military threat.
And here Moscow appears again. Well, how could it be without her? The Kremlin's almost total influence makes Belarus not just an ally, but a real staging ground for provocations against NATO.
Frankly speaking, these are almost wartime conditions.
Just remember the statement about the hazel grove on the territory of Belarus.
In addition, the first positions of the Oreshnik missile system have been set up. It's in our possession. Since yesterday, it has been put on combat duty.
Or the information that Russia is using Belarusian territory to attack Ukraine and put pressure on European countries.
Operators of Russian Shahed drones are striking Ukraine, including from Belarusian territory. Communication for the strikes is maintained from Belarusian territory. Russia is using Belarus as a testing ground to blackmail Europe. Nevertheless,
In Minsk, they have stated that they do not intend to go to war with Western countries. But it's unlikely that one Kremlin dictator will listen to another, the potato one.
As for being drawn into the war, I have my doubts because, in my opinion, Lukashenko still makes these decisions himself. And for now, he wants to keep his freedom to maneuver, including for his own dealings with Trump. None. Puffing up his cheeks, putting on a show of danger. Of course, Lukashenko will do that, but you can't say he's completely under Putin's control. That's not the case. But that doesn't stop him from actually carrying out and preparing provocations.
Lithuania is closely monitoring the developments in the Republic, and they state that, for now, there is no reason to panic. But Russia clearly has its own plans for Belarus. After all, the constant probing at NATO's borders and testing the neighbors' reactions is a systematic strategy, as is testing the alliance's patience.
Meanwhile, Ukraine is rapidly developing its military-industrial complex. Watch out, Minsk and the Kremlin. Ukrainian ballistic missiles can reach anywhere. No more waiting or Western restrictions. Our brilliant engineers, together with British specialists, have made an incredible breakthrough and forged their own deadly arsenal. How, with what, and when Ukraine will wipe out military bases on Russian territory, you'll find out in this report.
The Ukrainian missile, which today is feared not only by our enemies, but, thanks to its accuracy and low production cost, is even a concern for Kyiv's partners. In February 2022, we asked our Western partners to close the airspace over Ukraine. But by February 2026, it is Europe that is asking Ukraine to share its unique experience. How can you do this yourself?
It's a very simple technology. There's nothing complicated needed here. There are plenty of books written about this where everything is explained, how it's done, what's so difficult about it.
As it turned out, modern American and European air defense technologies have a huge drawback: their cost. Even though Western weaponry is technologically unmatched given the current realities of warfare, NATO would only be able to defend against enemy missiles and drones for a few days. The West simply doesn't have enough resources for anything more. After all, each of these missiles is tens or even hundreds of times more expensive than the drones they are used to destroy.
Right now, intercepting an Iskander costs over $6 million.
And this is where Ukraine comes to the West's aid with its unique Flamingo missile.
We want to bring that down to $1 million or $1.5 million, so that intercepting an Iskander would cost...
With the help of the FP9 missile? Yes.
With the help of the F-missile.
The Ukrainian Flamingo is already demonstrating unprecedented effectiveness and accuracy, striking strategic targets in Russia. The missile, created in the shortest possible time, has become yet another headache for Putin and his generals. Since the development is entirely domestic, the Ukrainian armed forces don't need any permissions. They can strike with the Flamingo wherever they want, and wherever they need to. The only problem our developers have to put up with is scaling up production. So far, it hasn't been possible to produce enough missiles per month to meet the needs of the Ukrainian armed forces.
This is a strategic weapon. Unfortunately, strategic weapons can't be bought or launched today in the same quantities as hotcakes, like it happens with FPV drones. For the effect to be seen by everyone, for it to reach every household, but based on the missions that have been carried out so far, we see that it fully meets the objectives we set for it.
For now, there aren't enough domestic missiles to strike. There aren't enough to hit all targets on the territory of the Russian Federation, so our Western partners have to help with this as well. For example, the United Kingdom is developing a new deep strike ballistic missile for Ukraine.
We can state that first and foremost, we're talking about a missile that can be quickly scaled up and is a relatively inexpensive means. Since the government of the United Kingdom is specifically emphasizing that this should be a means that is cost-effective, meaning it will meet the demands of the times, as we see that the armed forces need a lot of such means, and it cannot be too expensive. As a result,
as part of the Nightfall project, Britain announced a competition for the accelerated development of ballistic missiles designed for combat operations under conditions of high threat and strong electromagnetic interference. The modern English missile will be able to launch from various platforms, carry out a series of launches, and leave its position within a few minutes. The system will be equipped with a 200-kilogram high-explosive warhead. It will feature high accuracy and a range of up to 1,000 kilometers.
500 kilometers. This completely covers all the temporarily occupied territory of Ukraine. It also covers a significant part of the European territory of the Russian Federation. And at this depth, the enemy places both its higher-level headquarters, ranging from brigade, divisional, and up to army and group of forces levels. These are also quite serious logistical hubs. That is, these are places where fuel and lubricants as well as ammunition depots are concentrated.
In combination with the Ukrainian flaming, the British missile could significantly reduce the Kremlin's and personally Putin's desire to continue their campaign. Instead of missile strikes on peaceful Ukrainian cities, the bunker dweller will be forced to endlessly defend against the missiles of the Ukrainian armed forces.
The number and intensity of operations by our security forces using strike drones, including against strategic targets, are wearing down the enemy's air defense forces, the opposing enemy forces. And the strategic combination of ballistic weapons and strike drones can successfully execute and deliver targeted strikes against specific, highly sensitive and critically important enemy facilities.
And it will only get worse from here, at least for the Kremlin. Ukrainian developers promise to reach the necessary supply volumes of ballistic weapons for the armed forces of Ukraine by the end of this year, while simultaneously creating more and more types of advanced weaponry.
In a year, it will be ballistic weapons. In 2 or 3 years, it will be the creation of an anti-ballistic air defense shield over all of Europe.
On the horizon, a new powerful enemy awaits Putin. Hysteria in the Kremlin over weapons from South Korea. Russia, in a panic, has made itself yet another enemy. As soon as information about direct military supplies from Seoul to the Ukrainian armed forces leaked to the media, a real fit began in Moscow, and immediately threats of mythical retribution against the Koreans started pouring in. Let's break down the details of this pathetic Moscow outcry right now.
2 or 3 weeks and it was all supposed to be over. As a result, today is February 24th, 2026. Exactly 4 years since the Kremlin's occupying forces launched their full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
I have made the decision to conduct a special military operation.
This war has become the bloodiest and most destructive in the history of Russia and Ukraine since the end of World War II. In 4 years, the Russian Federation has lost more people than in all its wars and conflicts combined. Throughout the entire existence of the aggressor country taken together, and with each passing year, the number of Russians killed and maimed in Ukraine only increases, while the territories seized by the Kremlin are incomparably small compared to the losses in manpower. Despite the fact that in 2025 they managed to mobilize and conscript 406,000 people into military service, their total losses, including those killed and wounded, amounted to about 418,000 soldiers. The year 2025 became the first during the entire war when the losses of the Russian army exceeded the number of new recruits. Losses are increasing while the amount of captured territory is only decreasing. Throughout the entire past year, the Kremlin captured less than 1% of Ukraine's territory, while in just the incomplete month of February 2026, the Ukrainian armed forces have already reclaimed.
Things are not going so smoothly for the Russians. They are facing serious resistance from the armed forces of Ukraine and are even encountering situations where the Ukrainian military, in turn, are launching offensive actions themselves. Since February 2022,
Russia has managed to inflict serious damage on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. This winter has been the coldest and darkest for Ukrainians, but it did not break them. In turn, Ukraine also carried out massive strikes on Russian energy facilities. From Belgorod to Smolensk, Russians also experienced what blackouts are like.
Oh, are they bombing us? Are we being bombed?
I don't know.
Just last year, at least 25 out of Russia's 38 largest energy facilities were damaged by Ukrainian drones. In addition, the cold winter showed that Russia's public utilities are in terrible condition. And all the money goes only to the war, not to repairs.
There is a monstrous underinvestment in public utilities. We are currently facing a staggering and widespread underinvestment in all of our critical energy infrastructure systems. That is to say, whenever unforeseen accidents and failures occur in various local settlements, it suddenly turns out that there is a central heating plant there that has not been properly repaired or maintained since the old Soviet times, or some other similar kind of systemic failure occurs.
To repair the public utilities in Russian infrastructure, about 10 trillion rubles need to be invested. That's exactly how much the Kremlin spent on financing the war in Ukraine in 2025. Russians have also started to feel that they are the ones paying for the war in Ukraine, as prices in Russia have begun to skyrocket.
Well, friends, how do we start the new year 2026? That's right, with a visit to the salon. So my husband went to the store. How much do you think it cost? All of this? 3,000. 3 grand. Have you
even seen this? In the region, it's 5. Even chocolate. They hide it in special cases because the prices have just shot up to the sky, already 139 rubles, and people are being forced to steal.
At the end of September last year, the Russian finance minister Silvanov explained the increase of VAT from 20% to 22% as a measure to fight inflation. Well, and after the new VAT was introduced, he directly stated all Russians must pay for the war in Ukraine.
We need additional spending on defense and security. Today, this is the main thing, the main task of our country. And in order to provide the necessary resources, yes, we are also changing the value-added tax.
It will take at least 2 to 3 years to make up for those lost years that were simply taken away from the civilian sector, all the resources. Once again, tanks, people don't buy them, missiles, people don't buy them, but that's exactly what's being produced. Naturally, prices are rising for what isn't being produced.
International sanctions and the ban on the sale of hydrocarbons, strikes on the oil refining industry, budget deficit, rising prices, colossal losses among the male population, as well as an increase in banditry from the so-called returning heroes of the special military operation. This is far from a complete list of the problems that Russia has faced after attacking Ukraine. In response, since 2014, Russia has occupied less than 20% of Ukraine's territory, becoming a global pariah.
What do you think about the latest events? Share your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to like and share this video. Stay with us because it only gets more interesting from here.